Welcome to the Infinite Wealth Podcast. I'm Cameron Christensen, along with our co-host Anthony Faso, and we just wrapped up our interview with Thomas Berkley. He's the founder creator of ATM Freedom, a step-by-step guide to creating a full-time ATM business. And Anthony, I was impressed. How about you?
I was as well. I spoke to him a couple of weeks ago just before we set this up and was very interested and excited to hear more about this. This business sounded very interesting. So I'm glad we had, and I'm sure your highlights, Cameron, are probably all going to be about the business and the dollars and the money. But for me, I go deeper than that, right? It's not about the money. What really hit home to me is this guy's story and how he got here. And I think it's a common theme that it's hard to achieve financial success alone. Mm-hmm. He found a mentor who had showed him this business. And he even made that comment when the mentor asked him, "You ever thought about being an entrepreneur?" And his thought was, no. I mean, I don't know anybody who does. Nobody in my family and my circle is an entrepreneur. But to me, I just think that that's a point where it's important to have a mentor, right? Sometimes you got to pay for coaching, sometimes you got to pay for the mentor, but there's a lot of people here that can help guide you and help you achieve those goals. And he wouldn't have done it without the mentor. So for me, Cameron, the biggest highlight was the mentor and how he built this business and guided him. So, but what highlights did you have? What stuck out for you?
I can see why mentorship would be a big deal because I've been mentoring you for the last 12 years.
Well done.
Yeah,
good save.
Yeah, you like that. I have 3 takeaways. Really, I'm excited for you guys to listen to this because as we got into this, I got more and more excited as he kept talking. And really, I had 3 takeaways. One is that there's a very low capital requirement to get started in this. Number 2, there's very low competition. There's not a lot of people that are doing this. And then also, this could be the closest thing to kind of truly passive income that I think I've seen so far, right? There's always effort that you need to put into something to get it up and going. But from what I've heard so far is that effort that you've got to continue to put into it is pretty minimal, down to maybe 30 minutes a month or so. So very interesting. And I look forward to you guys hearing this podcast interview with Thomas.
Enjoy the episode.
Take care. Thomas, hey, we are excited to have you here. If you wouldn't mind telling our listeners a little bit about your background and before we kind of jump into your niche here that you've got with the ATMs.
Yeah, for sure. Pretty much I wasn't even expecting to even get to where I'm at today. When I turned 18, it was around 2008. And 2008, as we all know, we had the whole financial crisis, housing market went crazy. At that point, I just got out of high school, and there was realistically no money around from Cleveland, Ohio, and there's nothing there. Yeah. There's really nothing there, right? And so at the time, my mother pretty much had to go and scrounge for me to find me a job, and she found me a job at AutoZone. And at the time, it was okay for them to just pay $7 an hour. So I made $7 an hour, and I worked 2 or 3 times a week. So I only had enough money to pay for my little phone bill. And during this time, I had a bunch of recruiters reaching out to me, and I kept ignoring it because I was like, I don't want to join the military. I don't want to get, I don't want to get involved in that. But then I looked at my surroundings, and I'm like, what do I have to lose, right?
Yeah.
So I got in touch. I got in touch with a recruiter, a Navy recruiter, and I did really well on the ASVAB test. And then they took forever to get me in, and I was like, see, this was pointless. And then one day, an Air Force recruiter came by, and they saw my scores, and they said, you did really well. We can get you in ASAP. So I was like, okay. So I got in. The recruiter did what they normally do. They give you all these hopes and dreams, and then I went off the basic training, get off the bus, you immediately get screamed at. I'm like, this is not what they told me at all. So yeah, I went through that, and did well there, and then we went to what's called tech school, where you learn your AFSC, and I was a vehicle operator. So I drove a lot of heavy machinery, tractor trailers, things like that, maneuvering, chemicals, weapons, and personnel, things like that. And then I got stationed in Delaware Air Force Base, and Dover Air Force Base. And that's where I actually met someone who was actually from Ohio. He was probably from an hour from where I'm from, which
Mhm.
because I'm from Cleveland. He lives in Youngstown. And if you know anything about Youngstown, it's kind of like just a big farm. So it's really small communities, really old school people there. And he pretty much ran it basically while there, because Dover is only probably 14 hours maybe
Mhm.
from here or less. And so on the weekends he would come back and forth, and he was kind of like the unofficial official mayor of that township essentially. And because of that, he dealt with a lot of the small businesses, the credit unions. He handled a lot of the issues and things like that. He was already doing that before he got into the military. So by us just kind of being two good old boys from Ohio, he was mentioning to me, and he was always asking, well, what do you want to do once you get out of the military? And I said, well, I honestly didn't even think I was going to ever be in the military. So now I really don't know what to do. I told myself for years I would never do it, and here we are. So I really don't have any direction. And so he said, well, if have you ever thought of becoming an entrepreneur? And I was like, well, it seems like it'll be hard. I don't have no one in my family has ever graduated from college. They've never started a business. They've never done anything. And I've never been around people, and I've never had a circle where people have done those type of things. So I've never seen it, in practice. And so he was like, well, no, this business is going to be really, really easy, and you're really going to enjoy it. And then he told me about it. He said, it's called running an ATM business. And I said, that sounds crazy, because everyone's initial thought is going to be the ATMs belong to the banks, because banks and ATMs are synonymous. They're together. You don't ever think of one without the other. And so he was like, no, you can actually utilize the same exact ATMs as the banks do. The only difference is the banks dress up their ATMs. They basically put a dress on the pig, so to speak, right? That's essentially what they're doing. They dress it up, they put the branding on it, and then it's there. But you can get a basic bare bones ATM, and you can work with local businesses, and you can make money from that partnership. And when he told me about that, it really blew my mind. Um, I was like, this is not going to work. I was like, this doesn't even make sense. But then when I got back to thinking, I said all the corner stores and the gas stations and places that I've ever been at have had these weird looking ATMs that just super bare bones, no logos, anything like that. And I was like, "Are you talking about those particular ATMs?" He was like, "Yeah, those." And I was like, "Oh crap!" So, so for a while, he trained me. He trained me, and he told me everything that I needed to know during my time in the military. And and when I got out, it just kind of went from there. I still stayed in touch with him, and I say, "Hey, we, when I was on leave, I would try to come and have relationships with the different small businesses and." Try to kind of establish something so that when I got out, I could go and work with them. And when I got out, I just tried it, and I saw how successful it was, and I just kept going from there.
Okay. Now, so how do you make money in an
Mhm.
ATM business? Maybe kind of explain how you generate revenue.
Well, tell us how you first started, right? So there was a step there that I think we might have missed as far as kind of he introduced you to the idea. Then
Yeah.
what happened? How
Yeah.
did you move
Yeah.
forward?
So he introduced me to everything, and we would have periods of time where we could go on leave. And that's kind of where they I mean, we were doing it anyway. We were always just driving back and forth. You're not supposed to, but when they officially gave us time that we could actually come and visit, our families, I would come with him, and he would bring me down to Youngstown, where he was from, and he would show me the entire process, the step-by-step process of how everything worked. So, the just starting from the beginning, you get set up, you have to have a very specific type of bank account to make this work because you have multiple transactions flowing through your bank account. And you just have to make sure that the bank is very aware of what it is that you're doing. You have to make sure you have a very good relationship with them so that they understand what it is that you're doing. Now, there's a myth out there that says that they don't want us to do this because we're a competition. And I was like, I'm pretty sure the bank is not worried about little old me doing millions of dollars. I don't think they're
Cutting
worried
into
about
their
that,
bottom
right?
line. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not that. It's not that. They just had to kind of look out because he told me about something that happened in 2013, and it was called Operation Chokepoint. And that was essentially where the government cracked down on money laundering and things of that nature. And because back in the day, you could just walk into a bank, you don't have to have an LLC, anything. Say, hey, I want a bank account. They're like, for what? Oh, for my ATM. Okay, here you go. And that's when these different unscrupulous people would go and take advantage of that. And so that's one of the many reasons why you have to have all of your I's dotted and your T's crossed in this industry, because the banks have to make sure that they don't get spanked again like they did back in 2013. So, that's going to always be the first step. And you want to make sure you actually establish your LLC. And he explained that to me down to a T, because I get a lot of arguments with people saying that, hey, I was told that I can do this as a sole proprietor. And I'm like, you can, but it's going to be a lot harder because you're not showing that you're trying to actually legitimately have a business in the bank's eyes, so to speak. But once you have all that established, the only thing that you do after that is you start to have conversations with local business owners. Typically, our target audience would be, convenience stores, gas stations, bars, nightclubs, um, and pretty much anywhere that's cash only. So if you're cash only, like those are our favorite places to go, cash only. So he showed me how to do all of that. And one of the many things one of the probably the biggest hardship was just having the conversation, because you're not selling anything to the business owner. You're
Mm-hmm.
offering them a free ATM. So the ATM is free to them. They don't have to do anything, and you're going to handle everything. But at the same time, just like in anything where there's sales, you need to be able to have a conversation with someone and explain to them what the benefits of an ATM are. And so some of the benefits for the business owner is that they're saving a lot of money on processing fees, because anytime someone uses their credit or their debit card, they are losing money because they have to pay processing fees between 2% and 5%. So
Mm-hmm.
they're already taking a hit on the cost of goods in general. Now they're also paying the processing company. Whereas if there was an ATM, about 30% of those customers are going to come in and use cash to pay for whatever their item is. And so because of that, the business owner is actually making money. And then there's also an opportunity there for a really good partnership if the business is doing really well, where you could potentially offer the business owner a small portion of whatever the profit is at the end of the month. So there's a lot of different reasons why a business owner would want to have the ATM. And then too, the number one thing, and I think people, and this happened to me, and this is what kind of led to my success, is understanding that people will come to an ATM and they will start using that establishment. So, for example, if I go to a barbershop and they don't have an ATM and they're cash only, they're going to say, "Hey, go across the street to the convenience store." I might never have ever been to that convenience store, and I might never have ever went into that store prior to this conversation. So then when I go over there, I'm like, oh, okay, this is actually a nice store. I'm gonna get my $20 for my haircut, and I'm gonna get some extra money for to get some snacks or something. So now this business has a new customer because there's an ATM there. And so that's kind of the entire philosophy of how things go. So when I first got my first placement, it was a small convenience store, and I didn't make a lot of money when I first got into it, but I saw the potential, and so I said, okay, this makes sense. So and kind of in terms of how you're making your money, it is basically what I like to call a cash recycling system. Because what you're doing is once the ATM is installed and programmed, and you're actually going to get the ATM from they have a lot of verified ATM distributors, and you can
Quick question,
purchase.
Thomas. How much is an ATM?
Yeah, and ATMs, typically they're anywhere from $1,900 up to $3,000 and
Okay.
anywhere in between. And you can get certified refurbished machines for even less than that.
Okay.
So they're actually, when you actually think of the word ATM, you think this thing is probably going to cost 10K. It just seems like a 10K thing because it's a bank. It's something that the banks are using all across the world. But they're actually extremely affordable. You're getting a brand new machine, and they're made to order. As soon as you order the machine, it gets delivered to you, and then a lot of these companies will install the machine for you.
Okay.
Now,
Cool.
the one thing that I made a mistake on when I first started, and it's just one of those things where someone tells me something and it goes in one ear and out the other. I bought the ATM for my little convenience store, but I didn't get processing for it. And so to make it in layman's terms, basically, I bought the computer without the internet, and I don't have any internet. So I had the ATM sitting there, and I'm kicking at it, and I'm punching it. I'm like, why is this thing not working? I'm like, come on, work. And I'm like, it's cut on, and I'm like, hey, let's try different outlets, and it's not working. And I called my mentor. I said, look, walk me through this. What am I doing? He was like, okay, so what processor did you go through? And I was like, processor. He was like, yeah, remember I told you about the processor? And I was like, oh, all right. So then I had to tell the business owner. I said, look, I had to get the call the processor. So it's
Yeah.
probably gonna take another 3 days. So the processing company, essentially, they're going to connect your ATM to what's called the bank network. And the bank network is controlled by all of the credit card companies, MasterCard, Sears, Visa, all that good stuff. And they are going to be the ones who facilitate the connection between a customer's bank account and basically the accounts kind of connect. So your processor is basically opening the connection from my ATM to their bank account. And so there's a lot of different transactional exchanges going on there. And the processing company, they make money because the customer's bank has to pay the processor of the ATM that's being used for the customer to access their account. So that's very, very important. If you don't have that, the ATM is basically just a paperweight. So
Mm.
you have to have it set up so that the processing company can come out and get the ATM programmed as well as installed. And the whole process is wireless. So it's super
Mm.
simple. And then ATMs run off of a Windows programming system. So if you can use your cell phone and you can use an ATM, they're actually super, super simple to use. So in terms of how the payment process works, is like I said before, you go off of a cash recycling system. So you are going to put your own money in the machine at first.
How
It's not
much?
going to stay that way though. But
How much?
typically, depending on the location, is anywhere from $500 to $2,000. I usually recommend between $1,000 and $3,000 for your first location, because the ultimate goal is to make it so that you only have to spend 30 minutes a month or less on that machine. So the
Mm.
remainder of the time, you shouldn't be touching that machine. You shouldn't be worrying about it. You should just be collecting the deposits. And in the way that the deposits typically go, let's just say that, for example, all we had was $20 in the machine. A customer would go to the machine and they would pay a convenience fee. We've all paid a convenience fee of $3, $4, whatever the case may be. You, as the IAD, which is called an independent ATM deployer, you're the one who chooses what that convenience fee is going to be.
Mm.
Okay.
So it can be it typically is $2.50 to $3 globally. So you're going to choose that. So the customer is going to access the ATM with their debit or credit card. The ATM is going to say, hey, this is going to be $2.50. Let's just say it's $23 for the sake of argument. And then the processing company is going to go and check the customer's bank account and say, hey, do they have $20 in their bank account? Yes. Do they also have $3 in their bank account for the surcharge? Yes. So $23 comes out of the customer's bank account. Now, physically, they're going to get the $20 that they requested physically out of your ATM. So $23 within 24 to 48 hours is going to be redeposited back into your bank account. And you're going to keep the $3 in profit. And you're going to take that $20, that remaining $20, and you're going to put that back into the ATM. So you're essentially recycling whatever. So if you put $2,000 in the machine, you're going to continuously flow through that same $2,000 every single month. And that's why we call it a cash recycling system. So so you're looking at a profit of between anywhere of $200 to $1,000 per month per machine that you actually have. And like I said before, you are basically only spending about 30 minutes a month. Just that one time a month, are you going to go and refill the machine with that $2,000? Once that 2,000 has been depleted from the ATM, you're just going to put it all back into the ATM.
Okay, Thomas, when you said, the 200 to 2000, is that your fee or is that just money being deposited back into your account?
Yeah, so between 200 and 1,000 per month.
Okay.
And it can be 2,000 for, like, for example, things like dispensaries, for example. Like a lot of my clients have dispensaries. Those can do anywhere from 2,000 to the moon because they're cash only businesses, because banks don't want to touch them, so they have to have cash only. Um, but now what was your question again?
So so the how much you'd mentioned between 200 and 1,000 a month.
Right.
Was that just in the cash being recycled, or is that the total of the convenience fees?
Gotcha. Yeah. So that's going to be the total of the convenience fees. The convenience fees is your profit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thomas, what I'm hearing is I could buy an asset for about $2,000. And in a few months, I know you'd mentioned 1 month, but let's just say 3 months, right?
Mhm.
I spend 2 grand and then I get 1,000 a month. Let's just even say, oh man, I'm just that. Let's say we get our money back in 6 months. Like, I'm intrigued. Like,
Mhm.
I,
Yeah.
I'm intrigued.
I am intrigued as well. And how long? So now I've got some questions. How long does it, when you put an ATM on the premises, does it typically stay there? And then also number two is, how difficult is it to get it in there? Right? Are business owners open to that? And why don't they just do that themselves?
Yeah. Yeah. Good questions. Yeah. So basically well, excuse me. This is what happens when you have 5 kids. They all get sick at the same
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
and then you get sick. But yeah, typically you're going to have the ATM on the premises as long as possible. Now, one of the very, very important things is, for legal purposes, you're going to have an established agreement with the business owner.
Okay.
And that agreement is called a site location agreement, and that's something that's mandatory for you to have signed before a processing company will go and do their thing for you. Reason being, because of if there's no agreement in place, the business owner could come and say, "Hey, these guys broke into my store last night, and then they put an ATM in there, and I don't know anything about it." And then that's when the legal stuff happens, and the processing companies will be involved, because they're the ones that are basically are conducting business illegally inside of the establishment. So typically, what I like to do with my clients, and I always explain this to everybody, because one of the newbie mistakes, and I've made this mistake, and it took me a long time to get out of it, is to sign an agreement immediately for a year, 2 years, 3 years, right off the bat. That's a mistake, because you do not know if the ATM is going to make any money, or if it's going to see any use from the business's customers. because there are those businesses where customers don't need an ATM, or for whatever the case may be, they might not need it. You know what I mean? So that's one of those situations where you don't want to lock yourself in there, especially if the business owner wants the ATM, regardless of if that, some business owners want the ATM because they want it. They don't care if anybody's using it. They're like, what if someone wants to use it one day? And I'm like, well, it's not helping me if it's a year from now that someone wants to use it, right? So you want to protect yourself. So typically we install a trial period of typically 2 to 3 months, because that's when you're going to know that ATM is going to be profitable, because it gives enough time for a location, for customers to realize, hey, there's an ATM here. And also for you to see, okay, this is about how much profit I'm generating per month from this location. And so you have that so that if things don't work out, you can pick the ATM up and move it. Now, in terms of the location owners, openness and to have the ATM, typically the way that things have always worked out in is that there are bigger companies that prey upon small businesses. And what I mean by that is there are big companies. A lot of the companies are the same companies that we're buying the ATMs from. They would be the one that will advertise on Google. So if a business owner, a convenience store owner, for example, typed in ATM for my business in Google, these big companies will pop up with their ads. What they typically do is they make the business owner pay for the convenience of having the ATM in their store, because they basically are pitching them the same thing that we're pitching them, except they're going to have to pay. So not only is the company making money from the convenience fees, they're making money monthly from the business owner for them paying for the convenience of having that ATM in there. So if a business owner were to stumble down the rabbit hole to get their own ATM, that's what they would stumble upon. So when they come across an independent ATM deployer such as myself, and we're coming to them and saying, hey, you don't have to pay us anything. We might even give you a little bit, a little something on the side for letting us come in here, because we don't have big operation costs. We don't have a bunch of employees. We don't have all that stuff. So we can take a bit of a hit sometimes on how much profit we're doing, especially if the location is doing well. So, and a lot of times too, because they get taken advantage of, we can come in there and say, hey, we see you have an ATM in here. Are you happy with your service? They're going to be like, well, I'm paying $300 a month for it, and it's okay. But I'm like, okay, well, what if we offered you the same exact service, same exact ATM, but we do it for free? You don't have to pay us anything. That's when they would immediately cancel their contract with that company and then come and work with us. So, and a lot of times too, these business owners, when they do come across us, they're like, we need an ATM. We don't want to work with these other companies. And a lot of times too, and the whole process is a little too complicated for them to really invest too much time in, especially when they could work with someone who already has the foundation set up,
So how many do you have? I don't know if you're willing to share that. How many do you have, and what's the, how long did it take to go from 1 to 2 to where you're at now?
Yeah. Well, what I find myself is usually being at around 50 ATMs. I like to stay around there. That's my magic number. Don't ask me why. It just came to be that way, because one of the things that you can do is you can sell off locations. And basically the more locations you have, you can call that a portfolio. So your collection of ATM routes is called a portfolio. And if you were to go on Google now and search for ATM routes for sale, you will see that there are basically middlemen that are selling routes for individuals who are trying to get rid of their routes for anywhere upwards of $2 million. You might only have 20 ATMs in that route, but you can still sell it for 6 figures, 7 figures. These routes are highly sought after because it does take time to build a portfolio. Realistically, you're only you're really only limited by your financial resources, and how tenacious you're going to be about this. How many conversations are you going to have? It's essentially a numbers game. If I've talked to 10 business owners, 5 of them say yes, we'll work with you. I have the availability to go and purchase 5 ATMs. That's 5 ATMs I got right there in within that week. So how fast or how slow you can place ATMs is really going to be determined by your situation. I have students who have placed 10 ATMs in a year, and then I also have students who have had things happen in their life where it only resulted in them maybe having 3 to 5 ATMs. And me personally, it took me it took me probably, I would say it probably took me 3 to 4 years to get to where I'm at
Mhm.
around 50 ATMs, and that's just because of my own personal situation, my background, where I come from, and and things of that nature. But if I would have had the resources when I first started, I would have had I would have had 100 ATMs that same year once I realized the potential of how this all works, because it doesn't take very long to get an ATM set up. It ATMs were delivered in 3 to 5 days. The processing is pretty much instant, and these companies will install it and program it. They have it pre-programmed with all your information, your name is on it. All that stuff is done before the ATM even touches the location's floor.
How competitive is this market? So what I'm hearing you say is that you've got kind of the big box companies that are out there that are more or less preying on some of the business owners, but then you've got the independents that come in that offer them this. Is it How competitive is that in IAD market, or where you're coming in at? Is there a lot of people here?
Hmm. Well, it's I would say it's probably only jumped up 1 to 2% since 2018 when I got started. I mean, originally there was little to no information about this on the internet, and
Mhm.
realistically, there still is not all that much information about it. Ever since I started talking about it, a few more channels started talking about it, but still, even now, it's still not competitive. And the reason for that is we also have to take into account all the different businesses that are popping up every single day. Even during the pandemic, I did a video of this on my channel. You can go to your city hall and get lists of all the businesses, small businesses that are opening up in your particular city or state within that month, and you'll see that there were, even during the pandemic, there were hundreds of different businesses popping up, new convenience stores, new gas stations, new nightclubs, and if you were to capitalize on those locations as they popped up, and fast forward to today, a lot of those locations are doing very well profit wise. And if you had an ATM at that time, you would be doing well as well. And I will say this though, whenever a new person comes into the industry, the very first thing that they say is, well, I see ATMs everywhere, so this market must be saturated.
Yeah.
And then I always ask them, well, what about all the places that you haven't looked? Right? Because yeah, there's 10 places that you probably go to that have ATMs, but what about the other 300 places that you haven't visited yet? If I'm able to have over 300 students and all of them have ATMs in their respective states, even more places that you could consider more competitive, like Cali or Florida, places like that, that goes to show that as of right now, this market is not saturated. Especially since a lot of the ATMs that are in these small businesses are the ATMs of those bigger box companies that are preying on business owners. So what's going to separate the people who feel it's saturated and the people who are going to succeed is having all the information available to them as to how to maneuver themselves so that they can either do a massive takeover of these other companies that are taking advantage of these business owners, and also these people who understand that there's a blue ocean right now in terms of the ATM industry.
You had mentioned your channel. So you want to talk a little bit about where they can find this channel and what will they find there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I started a YouTube channel in 2018 because I see that there was a lack of information about how to actually get started. And there was a lot of people, well, there was probably one or two people, a couple of kids, and they were spreading a lot of false information about how this works. They're like, hey, you could get $1 million per ATM per month. And I came across it one day and I said, man, these kids are ruining this. And I was like, I don't know if anyone's going to listen to me. You know, I'm just an old guy. I'm gonna I'm gonna throw my hat in the ring, and I'm gonna try to debunk a lot of this so that people have the true information. So I made my channel in 2018, and it really took off. Right now, we're sitting at about 11,000 subscribers, and
Nice.
basically on my channel, I have over 100 videos breaking down very specific topics such as how to get started, what to say to business owners, how to find good banking relationships, how to build good banking relationships, how exactly everything works. So basically, in what we talked about today pretty much just scratched the surface of how this industry works. And on my channel, we go over everything in a lot of detail. So people have an opportunity to learn everything from A to Z. And then if they decide that they would like to work with me further, we do have a coaching program where we take on students and we help them get from point A to point Z. And we also offer services where we can provide them with their first clients, because we've been in the industry for a long time. So we can provide them with clients, we can provide them with ATMs for the new people who really want to get that accelerated start. So no matter where you are in your entrepreneur journey, I feel like this channel is going to be very good for you. So if you go into YouTube and you just type in my name, Thomas Berkley, and that's Berkley, just type that into YouTube and you'll definitely see me. You'll see all my videos pop up, see my smiling face and my thumbnails.
Well, and I know you also have a link to schedule a call with you. So we will go ahead and include that in the show notes as well. Now, Thomas, if somebody wanted to get started in this, do you have an idea of how much capital that they should have? And what about the time to really learn about this and kind of get some machines in locations?
Right. Yeah. So typically what we suggest for someone that's just getting in, you want to have between $5,000 to $6,000 capital to get started. And that pretty much gives you the cash flow to be able to have in the ATM. You are able to purchase your ATM. And then also you want to kind of take into anything else, such as your LLC. If you're really starting from the beginning and you want to make sure you have everything set up for your LLC, we always recommend that you create marketing materials as well, such as, make this officials, right? Logo, business cards, websites. These are things that don't seem all that important, but a lot of times they can make or break a relationship with the business owner, because you don't want to look like a guy that's hustling ATMs out the back of a van, right? And if a business owner wants to talk to you and they're busy at the time and they're intrigued and they say, hey, well, just give me your business card and give me some material to look at. I'll give you a call later. I'm definitely interested. And you don't have anything. You say, oh, well, just follow me on Facebook. My name is OG Tay or something. That's not going to cut it, right? They're going to say, all right, well, never mind. And what's going to happen is you're going to lose them to another IED who's more prepared, or you're going to lose them to one of the bigger box companies. And you don't want to find yourself in that situation. And that's one of the number one things I harp on my channel. And I know that a lot of people are not all that tech savvy. So we offer those services. We create that stuff for our students that come on board with us, just so that they don't have to worry about it, because we have people from ages 18 to I think the oldest person that I've seen got started with me was 63. So you're
Mhm.
you're never too old to get started, and you're never too young to get started. So yeah, so as long as you have the capital, you're ready to jump into this. I mean, it's definitely probably one of the easiest, lowest hanging fruits in the business world right now.
Thomas, two questions. One is what I'm hearing is once you get an ATM set up, there's not too much maintenance or anything else that is involved in this. Is that accurate? Right? You just kind of set it up,
Yeah,
make sure you're
yeah,
cycling the money each month, and
yeah.
then the
Because
other. Go ahead.
bank ATMs are like tanks basically. You know, they don't require any real maintenance. Once it's set up, you're done. And the great thing is, while you're doing your thing, because a lot of my students are single parents, they're college students, they're super busy. We have firemen, lawyers, people that are on the go. You actually get, once you work with the legitimate processor, you would have access to what's called a back office, and your back office will come in the form of an app on your phone or a website, and that is where you will see in real time, as it's happening, any transactions that are going on in your within your ATM. So you'll always know how much money you've made, how many people have used the ATM, and how much money is left in the ATM. So at the end of your day, you just take a peek at your phone or in your back office, and you know exactly what you need to do the next day if there's any steps that need to be taken.
How you got 50 ATMs? Are these all in one location, geographically located together, or is this something that you could do potentially virtually?
Yeah, so there's a couple of ways. The way that I do it is a combination of having it done kind of virtually, and also where I'm at now, obviously I'm just one little old man, right? I can't get to every one of those machines by myself. So this is kind of that point where you're like, okay, now I have to put on my CEO hat, and I have to kind of delegate some
Yeah.
stuff to some people, and then you could bring on some people who can not only scout locations for you, but they can also be what's called a cash vaulter. And the cash vaulter is the person who's putting the money into the ATM on your behalf. Now, the virtual side of things is, once you have an ATM in place, and once you've gone through that trial period, you've battle tested that location is making the consistent profit every single month. There are companies that will put their money in your ATM for you. So what that does is it makes your ATM 100% passive, because
Oh.
whenever your ATM runs out of money, that company is going to just let you know, because they're going to have the same access to your back office that you do.
Mhm.
And what they're going to say, oh, okay, cool. They're going to give you a call and say, hey, we're on our way. Don't even worry about it. They're going to go and they're going to fill your ATM up for you. So you would never have to go to that location, besides the initial meeting with the business owner, and however much time it takes for you to see exactly what the profit looks like per month. After that, you never have to go back to that location again. Now, that's an exciting thing. And a lot of people don't know how to utilize that process, because there's two different types of companies. There's the one that will put their money in the ATM for you, and you might give them 25 cents, 50 cents out of that transaction per transaction at the end of the month.
Mhm.
Or they have the other kinds of companies, which are more prominent, which are the companies where they're really more like, hey, I ran out of money and I need a quick fix, because they'll put their money in the ATM, and then they'll say, okay, give us all that money back plus interest.
Mm.
Those are not the companies you want to work with unless you have an emergency cash flow issue. But unfortunately, it's very hard to find the companies that are going to do, put their money in there for you, and they just do it for a small taste of the profit that you make. So, and it's just, with this industry growing the way that it has, there's a lot of scams out there. And again, I've fallen for it as well, where you'll order an ATM and you won't ever get that ATM, right? You pay
Mm.
$2,500, you don't ever see an ATM. You might try to go with the processor, and the processor is not legit. Like, their processors are supposed to be able to, they're supposed to have money laundering practices in place. And if you don't go with a legitimate processor, a bank will shut your entire business down, because that's something that they keep getting spanked on. So knowledge, having the knowledge of this industry and knowing who you should be working with, who you should be talking to, is one of the great blessings that I've had working with my mentor. And again, that just kind of is one of the reasons why I created the channel, my YouTube channel in the first place.
What it sounds like, the business, it kind of, when you break it down, it kind of seems simple, but there's important people and companies you need to work with, which is why I would assume it's going to make sense to work with you, or like an expert who can make sure, oh, you don't want to work with that company, you know, just trying to help with the systems. Very intrigued.
Absolutely, Thomas. Thank you. We really appreciate this. This was a great introduction to what you do, and we will make sure that we've got the YouTube link, and then also the link to schedule some time to talk to you in the show notes. So appreciate you talking to us today.
Yeah, no problem. I'm glad to be here.
All right, Thomas, thank you, and make it a fantastic day.
Take care.
All right.